The observation station hung in the darkness like a metal flower, its petals made of steel and glass. Inside the main chamber, Ambassador Sun-Hee stood before the Galactic Council with her hands clasped behind her back. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes burned with something the alien diplomats could not read. High Arbiter Velmoth towered over the chamber from his seat of power. His 6 arms gestured dramatically as he spoke, his voice echoing through translation devices. The other council members watched from their positions around the circular room, their various forms creating shadows that danced on the walls. "The Crethid Empire has made their demands clear," Velmoth said. His skin changed colors as he spoke, flashing between purple and deep blue. "They want Earth. They want your home system. You have 3 days to evacuate or face total destruction." Sun-Hee did not move. She had heard this same speech before from other species, other threats. For 50 years, humanity had been the new children of the galaxy. Every elder race looked down at them. Every empire saw them as easy prey. "And what will the council do?" she asked quietly. Velmoth's skin turned gray. Around the chamber, other council members looked away. One diplomat made a sound like grinding stones. Another's tentacles curled tight against its body. "The council cannot intervene," Velmoth said finally. "The Crethid Empire controls 10,000 war vessels. They have ruled this galaxy for 800 years. We cannot stop them. We can only offer you refugee status on our worlds." Sun-Hee smiled then, and it was not a kind smile. "You mean you will not stop them? There is a difference." "Your species is young," another council member said. This one looked like a floating crystal that pulsed with inner light. "You do not understand galactic politics. The Crethid cannot be fought. They can only be survived." "We understand perfectly," Sun-Hee replied. She pulled a small data chip from her pocket and placed it on the speaker's platform. "This contains every diplomatic message, every treaty proposal, every request for aid that humanity has sent to this council over the past 50 years. 43 requests, 0 responses. You did not ignore us because we were young. You ignored us because you are afraid." The chamber fell silent. Velmoth's skin turned almost white. Sun-Hee continued speaking, her voice calm and clear. "We asked you to help us build defenses. You refused. We asked you to share your technology. You refused. We asked you to stand with us against tyranny. You refused. So now we will handle this ourselves." "You cannot fight the Crethid," Velmoth said, and now his voice carried something like pity. "Your fleet numbers less than 300 vessels. Theirs is 10,000 strong. Your weapons are primitive. Your shields are weak. This is not bravery, Ambassador. This is suicide." Sun-Hee picked up the data chip and put it back in her pocket. She looked around the chamber at all the watching faces, at all the species who had chosen safety over justice. "You should have helped us," she said softly. "Remember that I said this. Remember this moment. When the dawn comes and you see what humanity can do when pushed to the edge, remember that you forced our hand." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her boots clicked on the metal floor, the only sound in the massive chamber. "Ambassador," Velmoth called out, "what will you do?" Sun-Hee stopped at the doorway but did not turn around. "We will do what humans have always done when faced with extinction. We will fight, and we will win." Then she was gone, and the council chamber erupted in confused voices. Far away, in the black depths of space, Captain Deho sat in his command chair aboard the HMNV Indomitable. The bridge was dark except for the glow of control panels and screens. His crew worked in silence, each person focused on their task. "Sir," his communications officer said, "sealed orders incoming, eyes only. Command code Alpha 7. Deho took the data pad and read the message. His face remained calm, but his first officer noticed his grip tighten on the armrest. "All hands," Deho said into the ship-wide channel. "Prepare for communications blackout. All transponders off. All external lights off. Silent running protocol as of now." The bridge crew moved quickly. Within minutes, the Indomitable vanished from every scanner in the sector. Around it, across hundreds of light years, other human ships did the same. 300 vessels disappeared from tracking systems all at once. On the edge of Krethid space, Grand Marshal Thexnar received reports of the human fleet's disappearance. He sat in his command throne on the bridge of his flagship, a vessel so large it had its own gravity. Around him, his officers monitored thousands of screens showing the positions of his armada. "The humans have gone dark," one officer reported. "All their ships vanished from scanners." Thexnar laughed, a sound like metal scraping stone. "Cowards. They run before we even attack. This will be easier than expected." "Should we pursue them, Marshal?" "No," Thexnar said, waving a clawed hand. "Let them hide in their dark corners. We move toward Earth as planned. The Galactic Council has confirmed they will not interfere. In 3 days, the human homeworld will be ours. If any of their ships try to defend it, we will crush them." The Armada moved forward. 10,000 ships in perfect formation. They had conquered dozens of species before. They had burned worlds and enslaved populations. They were the nightmare that haunted every spacefaring civilization's dreams. But in the darkness between the stars, human ships waited. They did not run. They did not hide. They moved into position with precision that came from 10,000 years of warfare. Every captain knew their role. Every crew had trained for this moment. Admiral Mira stood in the command center on Earth, watching holographic displays that showed both fleets. The Krethid Armada looked like a wall of red dots moving slowly forward. The human ships appeared as tiny blue specks scattered across the map. "All ships report ready," her aide said. Mira nodded slowly. She thought about Ambassador Sun He's final message to the Council. She thought about 50 years of being dismissed and ignored. She thought about every species that had looked at humanity and seen only primitive newcomers. "Send the signal," she said quietly. "Execute Operation Nightfall. Let them learn who we really are." The message went out across quantum channels, impossible to intercept or block. In the darkness, human ships received their orders and began to move. The trap was set. The prey had no idea the hunter surrounded them. Dawn was coming, and it would bring fire. Commander Jinho sat perfectly still in his captain's chair. Around him, the bridge of the HMNV Retribution was darker than space itself. Every system ran on minimal power. Every crew member had stopped even whispering hours ago. They communicated through hand signals and text messages on their personal screens. Through the viewport, Jinho could see the Krethid dreadnought. It was so close he could make out the patterns on its hull, the gun ports that lined its sides like the teeth of some ancient beast. The enemy ship was 3 times the size of his frigate. One good shot from it would turn the Retribution into dust, but the Krethid could not see them. Human stealth technology had taken 30 years to perfect, built in secret facilities hidden in asteroid fields and on dark moons. The galaxy thought humanity was backward, struggling with basic shield technology. They had no idea humans had been working on something completely different. Jinho checked his chronometer. 2 more hours until the attack order. He looked at his crew and felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. They were so young, most of them. They had joined the Navy thinking they would explore stars and make peaceful contact with aliens. Instead, they were about to fight in the most important battle in human history. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Hana, noticed him watching her. She gave him a small nod. Her hands rested steady on her control panel. Jinho knew she had 3 brothers back on Earth. He knew she had volunteered for this mission first among all her peers. She was ready. Across the vast battlefield, hundreds of human ships waited in similar positions. They formed a sphere around the Crethid Armada, each vessel carefully placed to maximize firing angles. The enemy moved through the center of this sphere like a fish swimming into a net, completely unaware of the danger. On the Crethid flagship, Grand Marshal Thexnar studied star charts with his senior officers. They discussed the conquest of Earth like it was already finished. Some debated which continents they would claim. Others argued about how to divide the human population into work groups. "The humans built some interesting structures," one officer said, pointing at images of Earth cities. "We should preserve some of them. They might be useful." Thexnar made a dismissive sound. "Burn it all. We will build our own cities on the ashes. That is the Crethid way. We do not preserve. We replace." None of them noticed the faint distortions in space around their fleet. None of their sensors picked up the hundreds of human ships that surrounded them. The Crethid had dominated the galaxy for so long they had forgotten what it meant to be prey. In the experimental dreadnought Sovereign, Engineer Take ran final checks on the prototype weapon. The device filled an entire chamber, a sphere of exotic matter held in place by magnetic fields so powerful they bent light. Tyke had helped design this weapon, working from theories that most alien scientists said were impossible. "All systems green," he reported to his captain. "The quantum disruptor is ready to fire." His captain, an older woman named Minho, nodded. "How many shots do we have?" 3, maybe 4 before the containment fails," Tyke said. "After that, we either retreat or the weapon tears the ship apart." "Understood. Get your team to safe positions. If this works, we change everything." Tyke moved through the ship's corridors, checking on his engineering crews. They all knew the risks. The quantum disruptor was based on science that humanity barely understood. It created small black holes that lasted only microseconds, but in that brief moment they would rip through any matter nearby. If the containment failed, it would destroy the Sovereign and everything within 1,000 kilometers. But if it worked, it would show the galaxy that humans were not just clever with old weapons. They were innovators who pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Admiral Mira watched the tactical display from Earth Command. Thousands of data points moved across her screens, each one representing a ship or weapon system. She had spent 2 years planning this battle, running simulations, studying every engagement the Crethid had ever fought. The alien empire had one major weakness. They relied on energy shields that could deflect lasers and plasma bolts. They had fought the same way for 800 years because it always worked. Their doctrine was simple: advance in overwhelming numbers, absorb enemy fire with shields, destroy them with superior firepower. Humanity had studied this doctrine carefully. Then they built weapons designed specifically to defeat it. Railguns accelerated solid metal slugs to incredible speeds using magnetic force. At near light speed, these projectiles hit with the power of small nuclear weapons. Energy shields could not stop solid matter moving that fast. The Crethid shields would be useless. "Admiral," her aide said softly, "all ships report ready. We're at T-minus 30 minutes. Mira took a deep breath. In 30 minutes, they would either save humanity or doom it. There was no middle ground. If this attack failed, Earth would fall. Every human colony would be destroyed. Their species would be erased from the galaxy. But if it succeeded, everything would change. "Send the final order," she said. "All ships are weapons-free at my mark. Tell them to make every shot count. Tell them Earth is watching." Back on the Retribution, Jinho received the 30-minute warning. He opened a secure channel to his crew, speaking for the first time in hours. His voice was barely above a whisper. "This is it. In 30 minutes we fire. Remember your training. Remember why we fight. We are not just defending Earth. We are showing the galaxy that humanity deserves respect, that we will not be pushed around by bullies and tyrants." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. The Krathid think they are predators and we are prey. They think our silence means fear. They are wrong. Our silence means focus. Let's show them what happens when they mistake patience for weakness. Lieutenant Hana began target acquisition. Her computer identified the weak points on the nearby dreadnought, the spots where armor was thinnest, where vital systems lay beneath the hull. She marked 17 targets, each one critical. When she fired, that dreadnought would die in seconds. Around the sphere of battle, hundreds of other human officers did the same. They marked targets, calculated firing solutions, and waited. The Krathid armada moved deeper into the trap with every passing minute. Grand Marshal Thexnar stood and stretched his massive frame. "I grow bored with this journey," he announced. "Wake me when we reach Earth's system. I want to watch their planet burn." He walked toward his private chambers, confident and unconcerned. Behind him, his officers continued their duties, monitoring systems and checking formations. None of them knew they had minutes left to live. Admiral Mira counted down the seconds. "All ships, prepare to fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." The attack order flashed across quantum channels, reaching every human ship simultaneously. Commander Jinho tapped his weapons officer's shoulder. Lieutenant Hana pressed the firing button. All across the battlefield, hundreds of human ships opened fire at once. Railgun slugs burst from magnetic accelerators, crossing the void at relativistic speeds. There was no warning, no chance to dodge. The projectiles hit their targets before the Krathid even knew they were under attack. Hana watched her display as 17 red dots blinked and died. The dreadnought broke apart in silence, its hull unable to withstand the kinetic impacts. Debris expanded outward in a perfect sphere. She immediately locked onto her next target and fired again and again. Her fingers moved across the controls like she was playing an instrument, each motion precise and deadly. "Targets destroyed," she reported calmly. "Moving to secondary targets." Across the entire Krathid formation, ships died by the hundreds. Their shields flickered uselessly as solid metal punched through armor and into reactors. Explosions bloomed in the darkness, brief flowers of light that faded into nothing. Engineer Tayek watched his captain give the order. The quantum disruptor fired and reality itself seemed to scream. A point of absolute darkness appeared in space, pulling in everything around it. 3 Krathid battleships collapsed inward, their mass compressed into something smaller than an atom before the micro-black hole evaporated. "It works," Tak whispered in awe and horror. "It actually works." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 10,000 Krathid warships had vanished, replaced by clouds of debris that would drift through space for centuries. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. Most had never even been detected. Dawn was coming to the galaxy, and it would rise on a very different universe than the one that had gone to sleep. The first reports came in scattered pieces. A trading vessel detected debris where the Krathid fleet should have been. A monitoring station picked up strange energy readings. A diplomatic courier found empty space where 10,000 warships had traveled just hours before. High Arbiter Velmoth stood in his private chamber, reading the messages as they arrived. His skin flickered through colors rapidly, a sign of deep confusion among his species. He read each report 3 times, unable to believe what they said. The Krathid armada had vanished, completely, without warning or explanation. "Get me the military analysts," he ordered his assistant, "and find out where the human fleet is. Find out what happened." The Galactic Council convened in emergency session within the hour. Representatives from 30 species gathered in the Great Chamber, their voices creating a chaos of sound. Everyone had theories. Some thought the Krathid had used a new cloaking technology. Others believed they had jumped to hyperspace. A few whispered that perhaps the humans had developed a weapon, but dismissed the idea as impossible. Ambassador Sun He arrived as the arguments reached their peak. She walked through the main entrance instead of using the diplomatic corridors. Her footsteps echoed through the chamber, and slowly the arguing voices fell silent. She carried a small case in her hands. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, and her face showed no emotion. She moved to the center speaker platform and set the case down with a soft click. "Honored members of the council," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I believe you have questions about the Crethid fleet." Velmoth leaned forward in his seat. "Ambassador, do you know what happened? Our sensors show nothing but debris fields where their armada should be." Soon he opened the case and pulled out several data chips. "I will show you exactly what happened, but first I want everyone here to remember something. 43 times my government asked this council for help. 43 times you refused. You told us we were too young, too weak, too naive to understand galactic politics." She inserted one of the chips into the chamber's main display system. A holographic image appeared above the platform, showing the Crethid fleet from multiple angles. "This footage was recorded 6 hours ago," Sun He said calmly. "I suggest you watch carefully." The council members watched in silence as the recording played. They saw the Crethid ships moving through space in their standard formation. Then, without warning, the darkness around them erupted with weapons fire. Ships appeared from nowhere, hundreds of them, each one pouring devastating firepower into the alien fleet. The Crethid ships tried to fight back, but their shields failed to stop the incoming projectiles. One by one, then dozens at a time, then hundreds simultaneously, the warships broke apart. The recording showed close-up footage of railgun slugs punching through armor like paper. It showed the quantum disruptor creating holes in reality that swallowed entire battleships. In 4 hours of footage, an empire's entire military strength was erased from existence. The chamber remained silent for a long moment after the recording ended. Then a council member from the Vorton species, a people enslaved by the Crethid for 300 years, began to weep. The sound was strange and keening, full of emotions that had been locked away for generations. "How?" Velmoth finally asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "How is this possible? You have been spacefaring for only 50 years. Your technology was supposed to be primitive. Your fleet numbered only 300 ships." Sun He smiled. And this time, there was no warmth in it. "You made assumptions. You saw what you wanted to see. Yes, we have been in space for 50 years, but we have been waging war for 10,000 years. Every human society, every culture, every era of our history has known conflict. We have fought with stones and sticks, with swords and guns, with aircraft and missiles. Space is just another battlefield to us." An analyst named Jiho stepped forward from the human delegation. He was young, barely 30 years old, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. He activated another display, this one showing trade routes and diplomatic missions. "For 50 years, we sent ships across the galaxy," Jiho explained. "You thought they were simple trading vessels and exploration craft. They were intelligence-gathering platforms. Every ship had sensors recording everything. Every diplomat was also a spy. Every trade negotiation was an opportunity to learn about your weapons, your tactics, your strengths and weaknesses." He brought up more data, showing warehouses and construction facilities. "You thought we were struggling to build basic shield technology. We let you think that. While you watched us fumble with shields, we were perfecting stealth systems and kinetic weapons. While you dismissed us as backward, we were building weapons based on physics you barely understand." Councillor Rixon, the Vortan representative, stood on shaking legs. His species looked almost human, but with silver skin and 4 arms. "The Crethid," he said softly. "What happens to them now?" Sun He pulled out another data chip. "The Crethid home system has 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Their military leadership will face trial for war crimes. Their empire will be dismantled. Every species they enslaved will be freed and given reparations." "And if they refuse?" Velmoth asked. Then we will do to their homeworld what we did to their fleet, Sun He said simply. We do not want genocide. We want justice. But we will not allow this empire to rebuild and threaten the galaxy again. She looked around the chamber at all the assembled species. The human fleet is already in position around their home system. Our stealth technology means they never saw us coming. We can strike at any moment, but we are giving them the chance to surrender peacefully. Another council member spoke up, a floating being made of crystalline structures. You have changed everything. The balance of power, the old agreements, the way the galaxy has functioned for thousands of years. You attacked without consulting the council. You acted alone. We asked for your help, Sun He replied. You refused. So we helped ourselves. And now we are offering the council a choice. You can work with us to build a better system, one where strong empires do not prey on weak species. Or you can oppose us and discover that we are very good at fighting those who stand in our way. The chamber erupted in arguments again. Some species were grateful, especially those who had suffered under Crethid rule. Others were frightened of human power. Some demanded that humanity be punished for attacking without council approval. Others insisted humanity should be thanked for removing a threat no one else could face. Velmoth raised his 6 arms for silence. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet down. When it did, he looked directly at Sun He. What does humanity want? He asked. You have the most powerful military in the galaxy now. What will you do with that power? Sun He was quiet for a moment, choosing her words with care. We want what we have always wanted. Peace, security, the right to exist without fear of extinction. But we have learned something from this experience. Peace does not come from begging powerful species to protect you. Peace comes from being strong enough that no one dares attack you. She gestured to the data still displayed in the air. The old system failed. For 800 years, the Crethid terrorized this galaxy while the Council did nothing. Dozens of species were enslaved or destroyed because everyone was too afraid to fight back. That ends now. We propose a new system, a true federation, not a council of the powerful. Every species gets a voice. Every species gets protection. But also, every species that can fight contributes to a common defense fleet. No more empires. No more conquest. No more looking away while the strong crush the weak. Rixon spoke again, his voice gaining strength. The Vortan people will support this. For 300 years we begged the Council for help. We were ignored. If the humans are willing to give us freedom and protect us from future threats, we will stand with them. Other voices joined in. Species that had been victims of Crethid aggression voiced their support. Even some of the older, more established civilizations admitted that the old system had failed. But not everyone agreed. Some worried about human power. Some questioned whether humanity could be trusted with military supremacy. Some argued that attacking the Crethid without council approval set a dangerous precedent. Sun He listened to all of it. Then she said something that would be quoted across the galaxy for generations. We are not asking permission. We are offering partnership. The Crethid Empire will fall with or without your approval. The question is whether you want to help build what comes after, or whether you want to stand aside and remain irrelevant. She gathered her data chips and closed her case. The Council has 72 hours to decide. The same amount of time we gave the Crethid. Use it wisely. As she walked out of the chamber, Councillor Rixon followed her. In the corridor outside, away from the other diplomats, he stopped her with a gentle touch on her arm. Thank you, he said, and now his tears fell freely. My people have waited 300 years for this day. You cannot know what it means to us. Sun-He's expression softened slightly. We know what it means to face extinction. We know what it means when the powerful ignore the suffering of others. That is why we fought, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has been victimized by the Crethid. Will you really free all the enslaved species? Rixon asked. Yes, and we will help them rebuild. That is a promise. The old Vortan diplomat nodded slowly. Then he returned to the council chamber to begin the work of building a new galaxy. One where the strong protected the weak instead of preying on them. The city stretched across the valley like a scar, all gray metal and dark stone. Crethid Prime had been the capital of an empire for 800 years, and it looked like it. Massive monuments dominated the skyline, each one celebrating a conquest or a victory over some defeated species. The streets were wide enough to march armies through, which was exactly what they had been designed for. Colonel Borum stood on a balcony overlooking the central plaza, watching her troops establish checkpoints and patrol routes. She had commanded occupation forces before, on Earth during regional conflicts, but never anything like this. This was an entire alien civilization, a species that had ruled a quarter of the galaxy, now under human military control. The Crethid had surrendered 6 hours before their deadline expired. Their remaining military commanders had looked at the human fleet surrounding their homeworld and understood they had no choice: fight and die, or surrender and live. They chose life. Now, Borum had to figure out how to occupy a planet of 40 billion aliens with only 200,000 human soldiers. It should have been impossible, but she had advantages. The Crethid people were not the Crethid military. Most of them had never fought in a war. They had simply lived under a government that waged constant conquest, while they worked and raised families and tried to survive. "Colonel," her communications officer said, "Elder Kresheva is here for the scheduled meeting." Borum nodded and walked back inside, into a conference room that had once belonged to a Crethid general. The furniture was too large for humans, designed for a species that averaged 3 meters tall. She sat in a chair that made her feel like a child. Elder Kresheva entered slowly. She was old for a Crethid. Her scales faded from deep green to pale gray. She moved with the careful steps of someone who had lived through too much and expected the worst. Behind her, 2 younger Crethid carried data pads and recording equipment. "Please, sit," Borum said, gesturing to the chairs across from her. Kresheva sat, her 4 eyes studying the human colonel with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "I expected chains," she said finally, "or execution. Your people destroyed our fleet in a single night. You could burn this city to ash. Why this meeting instead?" Borum pulled up a holographic display showing food distribution centers, medical stations, and civilian administration zones. "Because we are not here to destroy your people. We are here to end your government's ability to wage aggressive war. There is a difference." She highlighted several areas on the map. "These are the districts where we have established aid stations. Food, medical care, and basic services are available to all civilians. No cost, no questions asked. We understand that the surrender disrupted your supply chains. We will not let your people starve while we sort out the political situation." Kresheva stared at the display like it might be a trap. "Why? We would have shown you no mercy. Our generals planned to enslave your entire species. We would have taken everything from you." "I know," Borum said quietly. "We recovered the invasion plans from your military archives. I have read what they intended to do to Earth. It was thorough and brutal. Then why not do the same to us?" Borum leaned forward. "Because that is why you lost. You think power means crushing everyone weaker than you. We think power means having the strength to show mercy. Your empire fell because you made enemies of everyone. We are building something different." She changed the display to show detention facilities. "Your military leadership is being held here. They will face trial for war crimes. We have evidence of atrocities committed on dozens of worlds. Justice will be done. But your people, the civilians who did not plan these wars or commit these crimes, they will be allowed to live in peace." Kresheva's scales shifted color, a sign of deep emotion. "I do not understand you. You are either very wise or very foolish." "Maybe both," Borum admitted with a small smile. But it is who we are. Now I need your help. You were a civil administrator before the surrender. I need someone who knows how this city works, how to keep services running while we establish new governance. You want me to collaborate with the occupation? I want you to help your people survive this transition. A new government will be established, one chosen by your people, not imposed by an empire. But that takes time. In the meantime, people need to eat. Children need schools. The sick need medicine. Will you help with that? The old Crethid was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Yes, I will help. Not because I support what you have done, but because my people need stability. Across the city, Sergeant Young led his squad through the market district. They moved in a loose formation, weapons ready but not aimed at anyone. The streets were crowded with Crethid civilians who stopped and stared at the human soldiers. Young could feel their fear. Some of the civilians backed away, pulling their children close. Others watched with blank expressions, waiting to see what the conquerors would do. A crash echoed from a side street. Young signaled his squad and they moved to investigate. They found 3 Crethid looters breaking into a shop, stealing food and supplies. The shop owner, an elderly Crethid woman, cowered in the corner. "Hey!" Young shouted. The looters turned, saw the human soldiers, and tried to run. Young's squad moved to block their escape. One of the looters, younger and more aggressive, pulled out a crude knife and waved it threateningly. "Stay back! We will fight you!" Young kept his weapon lowered. "Put the knife down. Nobody needs to get hurt. Just put down what you stole and walk away. You cannot stop us. This is our world." Young sighed. He had dealt with looters before, back on Earth during disaster relief operations. Fear and desperation made people do stupid things. "Listen, there are aid stations 3 blocks from here. Free food, no questions asked. You don't need to steal." The young Crethid hesitated, clearly not expecting this response. "You lie. Why would you feed us?" "Because people need to eat. Because we are not here to make you suffer." "Now put down the knife and I will personally escort you to the nearest aid station. Or keep threatening me and find out why that is a bad idea. Your choice." After a long moment, the knife clattered to the ground. The 3 looters dropped the stolen goods and stood with their hands visible. Young's squad searched them quickly, finding no other weapons, then pointed them toward the aid station. The shop owner emerged from her hiding place, staring at the humans in confusion. "You helped me? But we are Crethid. We are your enemies." Young smiled. "No, ma'am. Your military leaders were our enemies. You are just someone trying to run a shop. That is not a crime." He helped her pick up the scattered merchandise while his squad kept watch. Word of the incident spread quickly through the district. By nightfall, more civilians were approaching human patrols, asking questions, seeking help, slowly beginning to understand that this occupation was not what they had expected. In a temporary research facility set up in the university district, Dr. Juan interviewed former Crethid soldiers. He was a xenoanthropologist, trained to study alien cultures, and now he had an unprecedented opportunity. Understanding the Crethid mindset was crucial to preventing future conflicts. "Tell me about the invasion training," he said to the officer across from him, a former ship captain named Vexthor. Vexthor's mandibles clicked nervously. "We were taught that other species were inferior, resources to be used. The strong dominate the weak. That is the natural order." "Did you believe that?" "Yes. No. I do not know anymore." The alien's voice carried confusion and pain. "I believed because everyone believed it, because it was what we were taught from childhood, because our entire society was built on that idea." Juan made notes on his data pad. "When did you first question it?" "When your fleet destroyed ours in 4 hours. We had 10,000 ships. You had 300. We should have won, but you used tactics and weapons we never imagined. You fought like every battle mattered, like defeat meant extinction. We fought like victory was inevitable. And what do you think now? Vexthor looked down at his clawed hands. I think we were wrong. I think an empire built on conquest carries the seeds of its own destruction. You defeated us not because you were stronger, but because you had something worth fighting for. We fought to take. You fought to protect. That made all the difference. Dr. Juan continued his interviews for weeks, speaking to hundreds of Crethid from all levels of their society. A picture emerged of a civilization that had been shaped by 800 years of military culture. Most Crethid were not cruel by nature. They had simply been raised in a system that valued strength above all else. One evening, Colonel Boram received an urgent report. A mob of freed slaves, Vortan civilians who had been liberated from Crethid work camps, were marching on a Crethid residential district. They carried improvised weapons and shouted for revenge. Boram immediately deployed troops to the area. When she arrived, she found Sergeant Young and 2 platoons forming a barrier between the mob and the Crethid homes. The Vortan civilians, their silver skin marked with scars from years of abuse, screamed at the human soldiers to move aside. "They enslaved us!" the mob leader shouted. "They killed our families! They deserve death!" Boram stepped forward, her voice amplified by a portable speaker system. "I understand your anger. I have read the reports. I know what was done to your people. It was evil. It was wrong. And those responsible will face justice." "Justice? You protect them!" The mob surged forward, but the human line held. "No," Boram said firmly. "We protect the law. The Crethid military leadership will be tried and punished. But these civilians in their homes, they did not run the work camps. They did not give the orders. They are not the ones who hurt you. They benefited from our slavery. Yes, and they will have to answer for that. But not through mob violence, not through revenge. If we allow that, we become what we are fighting against. We become the ones who destroy innocent lives." The mob hesitated. Boram pressed forward. "Your people waited 300 years for freedom. Do not throw it away by becoming murderers. Honor your dead by building something better. Show the galaxy that the Vortan people are not defined by what was done to them, but by who they choose to be now." Slowly, the mob dispersed. Some civilians spat curses as they left. Others simply walked away in silence, their anger still burning but controlled. Behind the human line, Crethid families watched from their windows, beginning to understand that human justice meant something different than they had expected. Later that night, Elder Kresheva found Colonel Boram in her office. The old Crethid stood in the doorway for a moment before speaking. "You stopped the mob. You protected our people even though we were your enemies." "Yes." "Why?" Boram looked up from her work. "Because that is what justice looks like. Real justice, not revenge. We fight to end wars, Elder, not to perpetuate them. If we wanted simple revenge, we could have bombed this planet from orbit and called it done. But that would not make us better than your empire. It would just make us different bullies with bigger weapons." Kreshva's scales shifted through a range of colors. "I am beginning to understand why you won. It was not just your weapons. It was this strange human idea that strength means protecting even your enemies." "Not enemies anymore," Boram corrected gently. "Just people learning to live in a different galaxy." 6 months had passed since the night the Crethid Armada vanished. The galaxy had changed in ways both obvious and subtle, and nowhere was that more apparent than in the gleaming headquarters of the United Nations Space Command, perched high in Earth's orbital ring. Admiral Mira stood before a wall of windows, looking down at the planet below. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in familiar patterns. Home. The place they had fought to protect. It looked the same as it always had, but everything else had transformed beyond recognition. Behind her, the command center hummed with activity. Officers from a dozen different species worked alongside humans, coordinating fleet movements across half the galaxy. The old Galactic Council had dissolved 3 months ago, replaced by the Federation Assembly. Every member species had equal voice, equal vote, equal protection. "Admiral," an aide said softly. She was Vortan, one of the first freed slaves to join the new Federation Defense Force. "The morning briefing is ready." Mira nodded and turned from the window. She walked through corridors that now felt different, filled with voices speaking languages from 100 worlds. The military academy that had once trained only humans now accepted recruits from any species willing to defend the common peace. In the main briefing room, she found familiar faces. Captain Deho stood near a holographic display, discussing tactics with a Crethid officer. The sight still made some humans uncomfortable, working alongside the same species that had threatened to destroy Earth. But Mira understood the necessity. Not all Crethid had supported their empire's aggression. Many had been trapped in a system they did not choose. "Captain," Mira greeted him, "how is the new training program progressing?" Deho smiled slightly. "Better than expected. The alien officers are adapting quickly to human tactical doctrine, though some of them struggle with the concept of proportional force." The Crethid officer, a young female named Sekra, spoke up. "We were taught to apply overwhelming power to every situation. Your way of carefully matching force to threat level is difficult for us to learn. But we are learning." Mira nodded approvingly. "That is all we ask. The Federation Defense Force is not about domination. It is about protection. Sometimes that means showing restraint, even when you have the power to destroy." She moved to the main display, which showed the current deployment of Federation ships. Hundreds of vessels, human and alien, patrolled trade routes and monitored borders. The largest concentration guarded the former Crethid territories, where dozens of newly freed species were rebuilding their civilizations. "Current status?" Mira asked. Her operations officer, Commander Junho, highlighted several sectors. "Mostly quiet. We have responded to 3 piracy incidents this week. All resolved without loss of life. The Vortan reconstruction effort is ahead of schedule thanks to human engineering support, and the war crimes trials on Crethid Prime entered their final phase." "Any problems?" "Some resistance from former Crethid military officers. They refuse to accept the new order, but they lack ships or weapons. Mostly they just make angry speeches." Mira considered this. "Keep monitoring them. Anger fades slowly, but it does fade. In 10 years, maybe 20, even they will accept that the galaxy has moved on." Across the command center, in a classroom converted from an old military planning room, Captain Deho taught advanced tactics to a mixed class of human and alien officers. He stood before them in his uniform, now bearing the insignia of the Federation Defense Force rather than just humanity's Navy. "The key principle," he explained, writing on a holographic board that translated his words into 20 languages simultaneously, "is to win so decisively that the next war becomes impossible." A student, a young pilot from a species called the Ixith, raised a wing-like appendage. "But Admiral, does that not mean destroying the enemy completely?" "No," Deho said firmly. "It means breaking their ability and will to fight, but leaving them a path to peace. If you destroy everything, if you leave nothing but ashes and anger, you create the seeds of the next conflict." He brought up tactical displays from the battle against the Crethid Armada. "We could have destroyed their homeworld. We had the weapons. We had the justification. They had threatened to genocide our species. But instead, we gave them the chance to surrender. We gave them the opportunity to rebuild as part of something better." Another student, this one Crethid, spoke hesitantly. "Some of my people say you were weak to show mercy." Deho met the young officer's 4 eyes steadily. Some of my people said the same thing. They wanted revenge for the threat your empire posed. But mercy is not weakness. Mercy is choosing not to use power you possess. That is the hardest kind of strength. He closed the tactical displays and faced his class directly. Every one of you will face situations where you have the power to destroy, where anger or fear or doctrine tells you to use maximum force. In those moments, remember why we fight. Not to dominate, not to conquer, but to create a galaxy where everyone can live without fear. The classroom was silent. Then the Ixith pilot spoke again, her voice thoughtful. This is very different from what most of our species were taught. I know, Deho said. Changing 800 years of thinking takes time, but it starts here, with people like you who are willing to learn a different way. In another part of the orbital complex, Ambassador Sun-Hee worked with representatives from 40 species to finalize the Federation Charter. The negotiations had taken months, every word debated, every clause examined for hidden advantages or traps. It was exhausting work, but crucial. Article 17, said a diplomat from the Yeth Consortium. It gives humans veto power over military deployments for 50 years. Some of our members see this as human domination by another name. Sun-Hee had expected this argument. You are right to be concerned, but consider the reality. Humanity currently possesses 90% of the galaxy's effective military power. We could simply impose our will. Instead, we are offering a gradual transition to shared authority. She pulled up a chart showing the planned timeline. In 50 years, assuming no major threats emerge, human veto power expires. By then, other species will have built their own advanced fleets using the technology we are sharing. Power will be distributed more evenly. And if humanity changes its mind, if in 50 years you decide to keep that veto, Sun-Hee smiled, then you will have the ships and weapons to oppose us. That is the point. We are deliberately giving away our military advantage slowly to create a true balance of power. No empire can last forever. Better to choose how and when to share power than to have it taken by force. The diplomats murmured among themselves. Finally, the Yeth representative nodded. It is still a gamble. We must trust that humanity means what it says. Yes, Sun-Hee agreed. Trust is always a gamble. But look at our actions over the past 6 months. We freed the slaves. We held fair trials. We protected even our former enemies from revenge. We have shared our technology and our knowledge. Trust must be earned, and we are trying to earn yours. The vote on Article 17 passed narrowly. Sun-Hee allowed herself a moment of relief before moving on to Article 18. There were still dozens of issues to resolve, but progress was being made. In a training facility on Mars, Private Yunji ran through combat drills with her squad. She was young, barely 19, part of the generation that had grown up during humanity's rapid rise to power. To her, human military supremacy was normal. She had no memory of the days when humanity begged for help from an indifferent council. "Move! Move! Move!" her drill instructor shouted. The squad sprinted through an obstacle course designed to simulate combat in low gravity. Yunji vaulted over barriers, dove through narrow gaps, and emerged at the firing range breathing hard, but focused. "Private Yunji, front and center!" She jogged forward and stood at attention. Her instructor, a grizzled veteran named Sergeant Quan, looked her up and down with a critical eye. "You are the fastest in your squad," he said. "Good reflexes, good aim. But I see something in your eyes that worries me." "Sir, you think this is a game. You think because we won one great victory, we are invincible. You have never seen a friend die. You have never had to make a choice between following orders and doing what you think is right." Yunji remained at attention, but inside she felt defensive. "Sir, I take my training seriously." "I know you do, But training and reality are different things. In 6 months, maybe a year, you will be on a ship patrolling some distant sector, and one day you might face an enemy, or a situation where the rules do not give you a clear answer. In that moment, all your reflexes and aim will mean nothing. What will matter is whether you understand why we fight. He gestured to the other recruits, a mixed group of humans and aliens training together. We fight to protect, not to conquer, not to dominate, to protect. If you ever forget that, if you start thinking our power makes us special or superior, you become the thing we fought against. Yunji nodded slowly. I understand, sir. I hope so, because your generation will inherit this galaxy. What you do with it will determine whether we built something lasting or just created another empire that will eventually fall. Back on the orbital station, Admiral Mira received an urgent alert. Her command staff assembled quickly in the operations center, where a holographic display showed the edge of known space. Unknown vessels detected, Commander Junho reported. 20 contacts, possibly more behind them. They are not transmitting standard identification codes. Configuration does not match any known species in our database. Mira studied the display. The ships were large, heavily armed from the look of their energy signatures. They were moving into Federation space slowly, almost carefully. This could be first contact with a new species, her communications officer said. Or it could be an invasion force. Get me Ambassador Sunhee, Mira ordered. And scramble the rapid response fleet. But tell them weapons hold, sensors active only. We do not start shooting first. Within minutes, Sunhee joined her via holographic link. The ambassador looked tired, but alert. Another crisis? Possibly. Unknown ships at the frontier. Could be peaceful. Could be hostile. I am bringing the fleet to readiness, but I want a diplomatic team ready to launch if they prove friendly. Sunhee nodded. I will prepare a first contact package. Standard greetings in multiple languages, demonstration of peaceful intent. But Admiral, if they are hostile? Mira's expression hardened. Then we show them the same thing we showed the Krathid, that the Federation can and will defend itself, but we give them every chance to choose peace first. The fleet moved into position over the next hour. Human ships took point, their stealth systems ready in case things went wrong. Behind them, vessels from a dozen species stood ready to support. This was the new reality. Humanity no longer fought alone. As the unknown ships drew closer, Mira found Captain Deho standing beside her, watching the display. Feels familiar, he said quietly. Waiting in the dark, not knowing if we will have to fight. Yes, but this time is different. We are not desperate and alone. We have allies. We have options. And we have learned that sometimes the greatest victory is not having to fire a shot at all. The unknown ships finally responded to hails. Their transmission was garbled at first, then cleared as translation protocols activated. The message was simple. We come seeking trade. We heard tales of the species that destroyed the Krethid Empire in a single night. We wish to meet these humans and understand their ways. Relief swept through the command center. Mira allowed herself a small smile. Transmit the first contact package and prepare a diplomatic team. It seems our reputation precedes us. As the crisis diffused into an opportunity, Mira looked around at her command staff. Humans and aliens working together, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. Because they had seen what happened when the strong preyed on the weak, and they had decided to build something better. 6 months ago, humanity had attacked without warning, and an empire had vanished by dawn. But what they built in the aftermath mattered more than the battle itself. They had shown the galaxy that power without principle was tyranny, but power with purpose could change everything. The new dawn had arrived, and it shone on a galaxy learning to live without fear. Ambassador Sunhee walked to the observation deck after the crisis passed. She stood where Admiral Mira had stood that morning, looking down at Earth. So much had changed. So much remained uncertain. But for the first time in humanity's brief spacefaring history, they did not face the universe alone. Behind her, the doors opened. Private Yunji entered, off-duty and looking for a quiet place to think. She saw the ambassador and started to leave, but Sun-hee gestured for her to stay. "Private, how are you finding military service?" Yunji approached cautiously. "It is an honor, Ambassador. Though harder than I expected." "Good. It should be hard. We carry a heavy responsibility." Sun-hee pointed to the planet below. "That world, those people, they depend on us to protect them. But also to remember what we are protecting. Not just lives, but principles. The idea that might does not make right. That power is a tool, not a justification." Sergeant Kwan said something similar today. He is a wise man. Listen to people like him. And remember, Private, that you are part of something larger than yourself, larger than humanity. You are part of the first generation to grow up in a galaxy where cooperation is possible. Do not take that for granted. Yunji looked out at the stars, visible through the reinforced glass. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled alongside alien allies. Somewhere out there, freed species rebuilt their worlds. Somewhere out there, the next threat was waiting. But for now, there was peace. Hard-won, carefully maintained, but real. The dawn had come, and humanity stood ready to defend it.